Hello everybody, how's it going? Our lesson today about conditional statements. Our lesson today about conditional statements, and by the way, conditional statement, we not just use it in programming language, we use it even in our life. For example, there is a lot of parents, they say to their kids or children, if you hit a good scores of this year, I will buy for you, for example, PS5, or I will buy for you your lovely toy or anything the kids always wanted from the parents. So today we will have in this lesson two conditional statements, if and if else statement. But let's start with the if statements and let's go to see the syntax of the if statements. All right, this is the syntax of the if statement. First, we use if keyword. We have if keyword exists in C++ programming language and in most programming languages. So we use if keyword, and after that we open two brackets and we put the condition inside the two brackets. Of course, we'll have some example now. If the condition is true, what's going to happen? If the condition is false, what's going to happen? So if the condition is true, the compiler will go inside the if statement and execute the body of the code that exists or that we write it or that we put it inside the if statement itself, because between these two curly brackets after that we create if keyword, there is lines of code that we use it or that we put it as a developer. If the condition is true, tell the compiler, please read this condition. If it's true, go inside this if statement and execute the code or the body of the code that exists inside if statement. And if the condition is false, pass this the code that exists inside the if statement and complete to finish or execute the rest of the code after the if statement. In all conditions, the compiler will go to complete the rest of the code after the if statement. For example, if the condition is true, the compiler will execute first the code inside the if statement, and after that also the compiler will complete the rest of the code after the if statement. If the condition is false, the compiler will not execute the code inside the if statement, but also the compiler will go and complete the rest of the code out of the if statement. Let's take first example. Condition is true. If the condition is true, for example, here we define integer data type and we declare variable, we name it x equal 10. We assign this variable x value 10. All right, you already know this thing's easy. I just repeat it because we're still in the beginning of the roadmap. After that, I will not repeat this information. You should put it in your brain. After that, I will directly go to explain the new things in the code, and I will rely so much that you already know the things that I explained before in the previous courses. So now, because we're still in the beginning of the course or the beginning of the roadmap, sorry, for that I repeat the things over and over to let it be stuck in your brain. So after that, when we define integer data type and we declare variable name it x and we assign to it value number 10, we use if keyword and we open two brackets or parentheses and we put between these parentheses x greater than 5. X, what inside it stored? Number 10. Great. Inside x variable we store value or number 10, which means x here represent number 10. X bigger than 5, 10 bigger than 5, it's true. So the compiler will go inside if statement and execute the code that exists inside if statement as I draw it for you in the PowerPoint here. If it's true, because this is true the condition, the final result of this expression between these two brackets, it will be false or true. As I explained in the previous course, we have listened about AND operator, OR operator, NOT operator. It was about these things or about this expression. Between two brackets of if statements, we put the expression. For example, 10 greater than 5 and 5 less than 1, and or these things that we take it in that lesson, we could put it here between these two brackets, the expressions. Okay, so this expression, its final result, it will be true because 10 greater than 5, so it's true. So the compiler will go inside these two curly brackets that belong to if statement to execute what inside it, the body of the code or the lines of the code that we write it inside these two curly brackets of the if statements. And after that, compiler will go to finish the code or to finish the rest of the code that exists after the if statements. All right, this is in case the condition is true, because here 10 greater than 5, so the condition is true, the expression, the final result is true. So compiler now what will do, will go inside if statement and execute code to be executed, to execute the code between these two curly brackets that belong to if statement. And after that, the compiler, after execute the code between these two curly brackets that belong to if statement. After that, the compiler will go to finish the rest of the code of the program. But if the condition is false, like here in the second example, same integer data type, same variable, same value, but we change the number in the expression. For example, if x greater than 20, if 10 greater than 20, then it's not bigger than 20. So the compiler will not get inside the if statement to execute what inside it. The compiler will not get inside the if statement. It will not execute the code that exists inside the if statement. Will pass it the compiler, as you see here, the arrow. It will pass the if statement. It will not go inside the if statement to execute what inside it, and will go directly to finish the rest of the code of the program. Why the compiler not go inside the if statement? Because the condition is false, and that was the second example. Now let's go to Visual Studio to see how these conditional statements will work. All right, this is our code. We define here integer data type, and we declare variable x. We assign to it value or number 10. We assign to this variable value number 10, and after that we use if keyword. We said if you want to create if statement or to use if statement, which is like one of the conditional statements, we have to use if keyword, and after that open two brackets, and we put our condition between the two brackets. So if the condition between these two brackets that belong to if statement is true, the compiler will get inside the body. Anything between these two curly brackets belong to if statement, we call it the body, which is the code. The lines of code that we put it between these two curly brackets, we called it of if statement. We called it if statement body or the code. So we have here one line of code. We use cout object to print or display on console screen this string. The code or the if statement body will be executed if the condition is true. If the condition is true, and our condition here, x greater than 5, x here represent 10, which means 10 greater or bigger than 5. It's true, so all this expression is true. So the compiler, while it's true, will get inside the if statement and execute the body or if statement, the body or the code that exists inside the if statement. For us, in our case, the compiler will get inside this if statement and print or display for us this string that we put it inside if statement. And after the compiler finishing executed if statement, finishing executed what inside if statement, conditional statements, which is like one of the conditional statements, the compiler will go complete after that the rest of the code of the program. What we have here in this program, after the if statement, we have this line of code we want to print it. After the if statement, after the compiler get inside the if statement and execute what inside if statement, because our condition is true, 10 greater than 5. So we have in our program, the program till here is not finished. We still have one line of code we want to execute it or display it on console screen, which is this. The code after the if statement will always execute it. So this line of code will be always executed. If the condition is true or the condition is false, it will be always executed. Let's try the program together. While our condition is true because 10 greater than 5, let's do run. Compiler should print for me the two strings that I have them, one inside the if statement, one outside of if statement. Great, the compiler print for me the two strings. The code or the if statement body will be executed if the condition is true. While our condition is true, the compiler print the code that exists inside if statement, and the compiler will be always executed the code after the if statement, even if the condition is false. Let's try this together. For example, let's go to this expression and change the number to 20, from 5 to 20. So 10 greater than 20? No, 10 is not bigger than 20. So let's do run. The compiler shouldn't execute the code inside if statement because the condition is false. Now our condition is false, so the compiler shouldn't execute the code inside the if statement. Just execute for us the code after if statement. That's great. Compiler not execute this code. The code or the if statement body will be executed if the condition is true. It's not exist anymore on console screen, but the code or the rest of the code of the program after if statement, it's executed. Why? Because it's not related to the if statement, and everything or anything after if statement, it will be executed whatever if the condition is true or false. And as I said here in this expression, we could use AND operator, or operator, not operator, not just these two numbers. For example, if we come here, we say x, let's return first in the expression the small number, which is 5. X represent 10, x greater or equal 5. It's true, this expression. But if we add like this and x less than or equal, for example, 8. 10 less than 8 or equal 8, it's not equal 8, 10, and it's not also less than 8. 10, it's greater than 8. For that whole this expression, it will give me false. Why? Because I use and operator, both conditions should be true. While we use and operator, there is one of these condition inside the expression is false, which is this side. X less than or equal 8, it's false. But x greater or equal 5, it's not equal 5 but greater than 5, bigger than 5, but it's not less than 8. So if you did run this whole expression, it will give me false. For that, the compiler will not execute what inside if statement because our condition it's false. Let's see together. Perfect. The compiler execute the code after the if statement but not execute the if statement body because our expression is give us false. But if you use or operator instead and, for example, we change it to or, we said or operator, we need just one condition true. If you remember this lesson of and operator, or operator, not operator, if you remember it from previous lessons, that course, the first course, it was prepare you for this level or for this lesson. So I hope that you understand and operator, or operator, and not operator, and it's easy actually, but I hope that you understand them because it will help you a lot in programming from now and in the future lessons. So if you use or operator, the compiler will give me true. So hold this expression, it will be true. Why? While we have here half of this expression false, but because when we use or operator, when we use or, we need just to have one condition is true. We need just to have one condition true, not all of them true. While we have here one condition true and another one false, it doesn't matter because we use or operator, and in or operator we need just one condition true. So if you did run now, the compiler should give me or print for me or display for me the two codes that exist inside the if statement and the code that exists outside the if statement. Great, the compiler display for me the string that exists inside the if statement. The code or the if statement body will be executed if the condition is true. Our expression is true, while there is part of this expression is not true, but because we use or operator, so the compiler will give us or hold this expression change from false to true because we use or operator. So the compiler check that you use or operator even if you have a part of this expression false, but because we use or operator and we have the another part it's true. So the compiler get inside the if statement and display for us this line of code that exists inside if statement, and after finish executing what inside if statement, compiler go and complete what outside the if statement, which is this line of code. The code after the if statement will be always executed even if the if statement is false. So that was the if statement and how to use it. And now let's get back to our slides. We'll take if else statement. It's one of conditional statements that we have them today. All right, the second conditional statement we have it in this lesson. As we said in the beginning of this lesson that we have two conditional statements, we'll take them in this lesson. We take if statement and now we'll take if else statement. Let's go to see the syntax of if else statements. All right, the syntax of if else statement is same like if statements. We will use if keyword, and after that we'll open brackets and we'll put the condition inside this bracket of the expression. If the condition or expression is true, the compiler will go execute the if body. The compiler will execute the code that exists between these two curly brackets that belong to the if keyword. If the condition is false, this time the compiler will not jump directly to the code after if else statement. The compiler will jump to see what is inside else body. The code inside if, or the code between first two curly brackets, we called it if body, or the code that exists inside if statement. And the code between two curly brackets that belong to the else keyword, we called it else body, which means the code that exists or written or was written inside the else body, which is between these two curly brackets that belong to the else keyword. So the code inside the if statement, we called it if body, and the code inside the else statement, we called it else body. So if the condition is true, the compiler will go for if body and execute the code that exists inside the if body if the condition is true. If the condition is false, the compiler will escape if body and will go directly to else body, will execute what inside else body, executed only if it's false, if the condition is false. Let's take the first example. If the condition is true, here we have if x greater than 5, x represents 10 as we assign it to the variable x when we define integer data type, like the previous example. So 10 greater than 5, it's true. So the compiler directly will go to the f party code and execute, and the compiler will not go to the else party. If the compiler see the condition is true, compiler will going to execute just the f party, will not execute else party 2. If the condition is true, the compiler will execute the f party and will jump. It will escape else party or pass x party and will jump to finish the rest of the code of the program. This is if the condition is true, so the compiler will execute what? The f party. If the condition is false, as you see here, the compiler will escape f party and directly jump the else party and execute the code inside it, and after that finish the rest of code of the program. And now let's go to Visual Studio to see how this if else statement going to work. All right, this is our code of if else statement. We define here integer data type. We declare variable x. We didn't assign any value to this variable because we want to take it from the user through the console screen. So we display this question to the user through the console screen. We use cout object to display this string. Please enter any number, and cn to the x variable because we will store the value inside the x. And after that we use if keyword to create an if statement, and we open two brackets and we put x greater than 5. And now we don't know x represent which number because we still didn't do run, and we don't know the x represent which number, 4 or 6 or 10. Anyway, if the x greater than 5, the compiler will come here in f party and will execute this first string that exists inside f party, because we said any code between these two curly brackets belong to the f keyword, or after the f keyword here we call it f party, which means the code that exists or belongs to the f keyword. So if the x greater than 5, for example, the user insert through the console screen 6, 7, number 10, the compiler will execute this line of code, and the compiler after that will ignore else body, will ignore the else body, which means will ignore this string, will not print it because the condition is true. For example, if the user insert 10, which means x greater than 5, which means 10 greater than 5. So the condition is true, the compiler will execute f body and will ignore else body because the condition is true. But if the user insert 4, for example, or number 1, so the condition is false, the compiler will ignore f body and will execute else body, which is no, the x is not greater than 5. And in all cases, if the compiler execute f body or else body, the compiler after that will complete the rest of the code of this program, which is the code after the if else statement will always execute, because the compiler after finish with if else statement or with if statement, whatever the statement that you use it, if statement or if else statement, the compiler after it's finished execute them will go to execute the rest of the code after these statements, which is here we have this line of code, the last string, the code after the if else statement will always execute. Let's do run to see how this program is going to work. Perfect. The compiler display for us the question to collect any number. Please enter any number. For example, let's insert 10 this time to let the compiler execute f body. Let's press enter. Great. The compiler execute for us the f body or the code or the string that exists inside the f body because the condition is true, because x here represent 10 because we insert 10 as a user. So 10 greater than 5, it's true. 10 bigger than 5, so the compiler execute the f body, which is this string inside the f body. Yes, the x greater than 5 with smile, and the compiler after that ignore else body. As you see here in console screen, we don't have this string, no, the x is not greater than 5. It's not exist on console screen because the compiler already execute f body, and with f else statement the compiler will execute one body, f body or else body. While the compiler execute the f body because the expression is true, so the compiler will ignore else body, and after that the compiler go and complete the rest of the code of this program, which is the code after the if else statement will always execute. So let's insert another number less than 5 to make the condition be false. Please enter any number, number 1 for example. Perfect. The compiler ignore f body because the condition is false. 1 is not greater than 5, 1 less than 5, so the condition is false. So the compiler here ignore f body and jump directly to else body and execute it as you saw it in console screen. Why? Because our condition is false because we insert 1. So the compiler execute the string that exists inside the else body that said no, comma, the x is not greater than 5, and after that in all cases, as we said, the compiler after execute the if statement or if else statement will go to complete the rest of the code of the program. Like here, even when the condition is false, the compiler execute else body, and after that complete the code after if else statement, which is said the code after the if else statement will always execute. That was the lesson of if statement and if else statement, which is under conditional statements. And see you next lesson, guys. Ciao.